Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Now, the quest to address the inefficiency that has characterized the operations of the Nigerian power sector over the years, with seemingly no hope for improvement, led to the idea of a power sector reform whose objectives were twofold. One, to address the chronic inefficiency in the old public utilities, and two, to engender a privately driven power sector with the needed capital to move the sector forward and meet Nigeria's fast-growing electricity demand. Now, 6 years later, how well have we fared? And joining us to speak on this and other pertinent issues is Nigeria's power sector is KOLA OLUBIYO, President of the Nigeria Consumer Protection Network and a former member of the National Technical Investigative Panel on Power System Collapses. Welcome to the show, Mr. OLUBIYO. Great to have you on the morning show.
Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Nigerians. My pleasure to be here.
Now, successive governments in Nigeria have promised incremental power since time immemorial. And then we go ahead to celebrate what hovers around 3,000 megawatts to 5,000 megawatts, at the most 7,000 megawatts. In your own opinion, what is the bane to Nigeria's power sector? Why is regular, constant, and efficient power supply still a mirage in Nigeria?
Thank you very much for laying that background. There's nothing wrong with Nigeria. Nigeria, in the true sense of it, can work. Nigeria, in the true sense of it, can work. And so the point we are making here is that government over the years have been paying lip services to improvement of the power sector. What do I mean? Before privatization, we were having a lot of wastages and leakages in the sector. I would consider it appropriate to have a paradigm shift from public sector-driven business model to a private sector-driven business model. And what it means is that investors were expected to come in and put in their resources. But the way and manner the privatization was carried out leave much to be desired. And you cannot build something on nothing. And so, of course, what we have in form of privatization is what we call a fraudulent contract. In any case, anywhere you have a fraudulent contract, there are vitiating elements, which means that we need to go for a review. What am I talking about? First of all, when we say foreign investors, whether coming with FDI or local funds, we expected that it's going to be a long-term investment that will have the gestation period and the cost recovery. And so these investors did not even bring in what we want to put in quote, the FDI, the foreign direct investment. They borrow money from Nigerian banks. And when they were borrowing the money, the exchange rate was about 100 and something naira, about 170 naira. And in 2015, Nigeria experienced recession. So most of this loan, the acquire license, not to talk of even operation. You cannot acquire loan to obtain license and don't have money where would that somewhere for operation, which in this case were lacking. So when they obtained this loan at 170 something to $1, the recession brought in exchange rate volatility, which brought the exchange rate to as close as 700 to $1 in 2015 towards December also. So the loan they obtained from Nigerian banks, the Nigerian banks that have correspondent banks abroad as partners. And so when they want to give loan for investment of this capital-intensive nature, they are usually procured from foreign investment windows. So they are going to be dollar-denominated. So the implication of it, just like what happened during the Babangida era, when Naira was 75 kobo to $1, and there was what we call SAP. So it made the loan acquire, if, for example, they acquire in dollar, say $500 million. By the time you convert it to exchange rate, there will be a kind of disparity. So basically, government on its part, now as I speak to you, the rate at which they are inputting for gas and all the value chain is 306 naira exchange rate. And all the variables in the power sector, they are not allowed to access funds from the official exchange rate. They go to they are at the mercy of the capital market. So all these dynamics are not in favor of the operators, so to say. So, and it has multiplier effect. The exchange rate now is about 360. So there's always a differential of 60 naira at the rate at which we call the market shortfall. Even when they are computing for every other thing, there's always shortfall, that tariff shortfall or this thing. That's on the side of I'm talking about the economics now, on the side of the operator, speaking in favor of the operator. Coming to consumer, before privatization, Nigerian consumers were indebted to NEPA, PHCN in code to trillions of naira, which if we convert it to dollars, roll into about 100 times the amount of money these DISCOs, TRANSCOs, and GESCO pay for the licenses. And the agreement was that since government does not have direct access to the consumers, that the distribution company should collect this money and remit to NEMCO. For 3-4 years, a lot of them, there are some DISCOs that made like 10 billion in a month. And for 2-3-4 years, some of them did not even remit money. And the money that consumers were owing to NEPA, PHCN, they collected it and pocketed it. There are items, capital items like transformer and a whole lot of things that are supposed to belong to government. Even the offices they are occupying, they are not paying for tenement, they are not paying rentage, they are not paying mortgage. So at the end of the day, it's a case of penny wise, pound foolish, which give rise to the fact that, there are people that form the powers that be, whether the present administration, successive administration, they are always in power. We call them AGIP. So these are the bulldozers, these are the powers that be, that came together to package this privatization, align the vested interests and overriding interests of the Qatar to override what's supposed to be the national interest. So you can't build something on nothing. So this is exactly what is giving rise to, so there are a whole lot of issues that we'll discuss about customer centricity, poor quality of service, metering gap, and what have you. So this privatization is not what we bargained for, and there's need for urgent review of the privatization exercise because we can't get results from what we have.
All right. Now, still speaking on the whole concept of the privatization of, our power system in Nigeria, we see countries like South Africa producing over 51,000, megawatts of electricity. I mean, Ghana, they've had over 3 years of uninterrupted power supply. And let's remember that South Africa's population is nothing compared to Nigeria's over 170 million people in the, country. So my question is, how would you rate the billing system? Because at the end of the day, we could talk about the privatization happened as it wasn't so long ago. It's looking as far back as 2013. So moving forward from this privatization, the billing system, while some people are still paying directly, we have the prepaid meter taking predominance in a lot of homes where people now believe that the concept of power is now being shared. The people who have the funds they have access to as much power as they can afford, while the people who can't, whims of the government, whenever there's power, we see power. Whenever there isn't, we don't. However, if you have a prepaid meter, you can pay for as much power as you want. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, at the risk of being immodest, I'm here to speak for consumers, but the reality of it is that we need to decide as a nation, in practical terms, what type of power we want to generate. Do we want to generate power to support growth, sustainable growth and development? Do we want to generate power downstream to promote poverty? And what I mean is that the UN benchmark for ratio to power is if you have 1,000 megawatts, the UN standard of benchmark is 1,000 megawatts supposed to be for 1 million people. And if you are having 2,500 and sometimes political megawatts of 5,000, 7,000 megawatts that we have been talking about, that means 7 million out of about 200 million Nigerians have access to electricity. And out of 200 million, if 7 million is having access to electricity, that means that you are not only the poverty capital of the world, we are equally promoting energy poverty. Dr. Yomde KOLA, my friend who was UNIDO representative for West Africa here, and Nigeria was, I want to say it boldly, that we supported his candidature as the UN, the DG UNIDO, headed the UN for this millennium that we are, the UN report on global access to energy. And thank God one of our own who has done very well is going to take over that, Damilola Ogunbiyi, the immediate past MD of REA. So what we are saying, in essence, is that the energy poverty in Nigeria is so high. 197 million people per ratio, have no access to electricity. So that is alarming. So we need to look at the issue of energy mix. The grid system, right? Like I said, you painted your preamble. I was a member of the Committee on the Technical Investigative Panel on Power System Collapses, and the reports are so alarming. Take, for example, if you move from here to the south and different parts of the country where you have this encroachment of the grid infrastructure by vegetation. What I mean by vegetation is that if you go for data from Ila, if you're coming from Asaba, Ila to Ebu, for example, there are rubber trees that cannot even allow for network. As you are re-energizing the network, the rubber trees will cut off the network. As you are cutting them, they are growing. So under the grid alone, there are so many places that there are vegetation encroachment. And once as simple as the leaf of a tree touches the grid network, 330, 132, the leaf will burn and the power will go off. That is transient fault. And over the years before privatization, when those who are in charge of the management of transmission infrastructure present budget to federal government, this envelope system, somebody present a budget based on need assessment of 100 million, they'll give them 10 million. Because somebody in the office is just using their discretion wrongly. So what I'm saying now is that
OLUBIYO,
there's
I hate to interrupt your line of thoughts, but we'll have to go on a quick break. I'll come back to talk some more about the power sector in Nigeria. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the Morning Show here on the Rise News, and we're still discussing Nigeria's power sector post-privatization. KUNLE KOLA OLUBIYO, president of Nigeria Consumer Protection Network and a former member of the National Technical Investigative Panel on Power Systems Collapses, is still with us from our Abuja studio. Thank you so much for staying with us, Mr. OLUBIYO. You've talked about the energy mix, but as it currently stands, we rely so much on gas. Gas is a very important component for the generating companies of Nigeria, GENCOs. And just recently, Nigeria had signed agreements with some Russian firms to better utilize gas in Nigeria. We also have that deal with the German firm, Siemens. With all of this going on, are you reassured that the power sector would work soon? Can Siemens save Nigeria's chaotic power systems?
Thank you very much for that background. Like I was trying to say before, there are issues of management, and when they are not addressed, any president, whether President Jonathan, President Buhari, will be misled by smart boys in the system. We asked for $3 billion under the past administration. Maybe under the present administration, the president had demonstrated intention. You ask the president for money, they give. And now, when the money comes in, it doesn't go to the real issue. Like I was trying to say, there's obsolescence of infrastructure. Go to Benin and most of these regional offices, they don't have impress. So what we want to encourage is that federal government should break, the regional offices into smaller units so that let them get their need assessment and let them have their subhead or overhead, which money will be released directly to them. They don't have operational vehicles. They don't have impress. When the grid has issues, they cannot do vegetation control. I was talking about vegetation under the grid. They need what you call caterpillar or tractors to remove them. There are infrastructures. Take, for example, we've lost over 30 transformers, power transformers of recent, due to failure of different layers of system protective devices. There's supposed to be different layers, incomers, outcomers, and what have you, so that when there's an electrical accident, the protective devices we trip off. We just had of recent in Kaduna over the weekend. We had in Komboso in Kano. We had in Calabar. We had in Lagos. Substandard equipment. So this money, when they get this money, where are they supposed to go to? They go to they line up the pockets of individuals. So federal government need to look into that by governance structure. The transmission company of Nigeria should be broken as a matter of urgency. We have ISO, independent system operator, is not supposed to be on that TCN in the privatization. Means haphazardness into implementation of privatization is what is taking us where we are. So ISO should stand on its own as independent system operator of Nigeria. TCN should be for project consultation and project delivery, and they have the PMUs. We have the market operators, we should be a standalone. Then we have EPSR, Electric Power Sector Reform Act. It's a sector-wide reform act that's supposed to be under the purview of the minister, and you now have under it rural electrification, and all the successor companies and NAC. It's not a NAC act. So NAC should have a Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission Act of 2020, which will take care of all that NAC is supposed to do. MBET is neither here or there. It's supposed to be like a sector mitigator. So if you don't address the issue of governance, we'll be making so much, we'll be generating so much political megawatts and be misleading Mr. President. Having said that, the grid is obsolete. There needs to be an appraisal of the grid by NEMSA. I presented a paper for the establishment of NEMSA, and I was a full soldier. Can say it without fear of contradiction, for the establishment of NEMSA. And the reason is that TCN don't subject itself to NEMSA routine tests. TCN should not be above the law. So if they want to install transformer, if you have a 500 in distribution level, if you have 500 kV transformer and the capacity inside is 300 kV, there can be equipment mislabeling. If something is 300, you put 500 on it. If you put a load of 500, it will go ablaze, even at the transmission level. So we have issues like that. TCN at the grid level, 132, any equipment that's going to be line materials, they should subject themselves to NEMSA. NEMSA is an institutional enabling act for the country. So we should not operate in isolation. I haven't said that. We're talking about the issue of privatization, borrowing, and what have you. The regulator, NAC, should be seen to be disciplined. They issued order that they want to review the license of some discos, and we felt it was a right step in the wrong direction. Now, the discos now, the remittance by the discos to the value chain, to embed and market operator, if not until recent. A disco will make 10 billion naira and refuse to remit money at all. We are not making money, and we customers are paying. Some make 10 billion in a month and remit 2 billion. So somewhere along the line, there will be like a synergy of corruption between the person who is refusing to remit and the person supposed to be in charge. Then there will be somewhere they'll be meeting, there'll be meeting ground. So all these issues, government supposed to come hard and make sure that whoever, a chairman of NAC is earning 8 million naira a month, and 7 million naira, commissioner earning 7 million naira a month, higher than the president, and the civilian fees about, chairman is about 400 million, and commissioners about 350 million. So we are paying them so much. All these monies are taken from the sector. So to whom much is given, much is expected. So what we are saying is that the regulator must be seen to have the teeth to bite, not party syndrome. Having said that, the issue of business model, that's what we call the milling buyer, willing seller. We have been complaining about load rejection. We have been talking about metering gap. A lot of Nigerians, apart from Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, I'm not on their payroll, consumers are willing to pay for meters. Some of these discos, they believe in continuously sustaining this estimated billing methodology to balance their books. The discos, to me, to the best of my knowledge, have different books. The one for the regulators, the one even among those people who call the technical partners and board of trustees, they are grouped into different dichotomies. So NAC need to have access to the loop. NAC need to have the capacity to monitor. Then government now, as it is, after 6-7 years, after the review, government should pull out. Government should just do the role of regulation. the discourse that call themselves PSC, they should be properly structured. These investors we have, to us, they are rent seekers and profiteering. Let me use the language because of practical experience. I'm speaking from consumer point of view because we are bearing the pains, we are bearing the burden.
Okay.
So what we expect now is that they should go to the stock exchange and offer what we call the initial public offering. Dilute their stake to 30%. We, the public, you and I, the organized labor, we are ready to subscribe. And when you subscribe to IPOs, there will be check and balances as per governance structure. So people cannot be smiling to the bank capital flight. Now, most of the technical partners they brought in, most of them were Virgin Company registered a week to privatization. They had no background business in power business. Some of them were into cocoa business. Some of them were into haulage. Some of them were into mechanics. Some of them were into all manner of things that had no bearing with privatization. And there are big names that competed.
Okay, now I would like to ask Mr. KUNLE
Talking about the Siemens.
Yeah.
Talking about the Siemens.
Okay. Yeah, just, you've elaborated. Okay, just, you were going to say?
Talking about the Siemens issue. Siemens is a equipment manufacturing company, a German company. We've had issues of SCADA provided by Siemens over the years. We have issues of Siemens issues that involve some ministers and took to court, and the issue of anti-corruption and what have you. And federal government took this a step in that direction. So these are smart guys. What federal government have just signed with Siemens is just to sell their equipment. Siemens is signing an agreement with Nigeria with only BPE. They didn't involve the discos. They didn't involve the JESCOs. Can you shave my head in my absence? So that cannot work. The issue now is that we need to emphasize on energy. Now, federal government through Niger Delta Power Holding Company need to invest in startup, renewable energy, off-grid. For example, in senatorial district, we have 109 senatorial districts. Now there's what we call sector-specific generation. If we have, the grid now is obsolete, is very elaborate and too laborious to manage. So in each senatorial district, if you have 10 megawatts of electricity that is off-grid, in each senatorial district, now hybrid to hydro and industrial cluster. What it means is that the hybrid of solar, for example, there are places that you need solar, there are places you need air, based on comparative advantages. So that when you have hydro and industrial clusters in different senatorial districts, that is 3 per state. It will create jobs. A lot of our graduates are coming out of school, we don't have absorptive capacity. So collectively, when you put this together, you will stimulate growth. This grid that we have, collecting loan and putting it to individual pockets, is a cash cow.
All right, Mr. KUNLE. I mean, clearly, you are obviously speaking from the consumer's perspective, and there's so much more that we need to tackle, especially the tariff system, looking at the fact that it has been increased for 2020. Let's head out to a short break now. When we get back, we'll touch on this and a few more other pertinent issues. This is still The Morning Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Morning Show here on Arise News, and we're still talking with Mr. KUNLE OLUBIYO, the president of Nigeria's Consumer Protection Network and a former member of the National Technical Investigative Panel on Power System Collapses. Now, Mr. KUNLE, you're still here with us, and you have elaborated on some of the issues affecting the Nigerian consumer. Now, another issue that may also be of huge concern to you is the fact that Nigerians are going to have to pay more this new year. Looking at the year 2020, we're looking at an amount of about 1.53 trillion in terms of how much Nigerian consumers are going to be remitting. This is over 600 billion higher than what the electricity distribution companies were expected to make. Now, looking at 2020 as a whole, so the man who's sitting at home watching it right now and he doesn't really understand, why am I paying 8 to 14 naira, in terms of tariffs for this year? Why is this increase even present in the first place? What does this mean for my finances? What does this mean to how much? Am I going to get more power? Does it mean that I'm going to have more power in 2020? Can you briefly elaborate on this increase in tariffs?
Yes, I was trying to talk about the choice we want to make for now in the nearest future, and what have you, that we need to make a choice between generating to support growth, is very fundamental, or generating support poverty. in 2015, early 2015, the then Minister of Power celebrated the peak generation of about 5,700 megawatts, peak generation. And to me as an individual, it's quite embarrassing. It's a national and global embarrassment that with our population, with, we say the largest economy in Africa, and we're generating that battery, some of 5,000 megawatts. It's quite alarming. So what we are saying is that as a young boy, I remember that I never believed that I could buy sardine for 250 naira. In 1983, if we want to get a bread and a loaf of bread and sardine, sardine was 30 kobo and bread was 20 kobo, 50 kobo. And you know how much what led to protest by Nigerians is because the price of Omo was increased to 5 naira. But today, you know how much we are buying. So what we are saying is that for us to achieve growth, we need to generate to support growth. And so this model of willing buyer, willing seller, we'll have 5,000 megawatts of electricity being generated. We have 13,000 megawatts of installed capacity. And at times you see, because of all these shortfalls, market shortfall, and that the rate at which government is computing for the discos indexing is 306, as against 360 naira in the capital market. So there are a lot of issues that got to do with FX and CAPEX and what have you. So what we are saying is that the regulator, we have said it times without number to them that we should have what we call 70% willing buyer, willing seller, which is to support growth. People should have choice. I'm talking about great source energy. 70% willing buyer, willing seller. We just have to face the reality. And 30% should be at tariff. Now, what it means is that it will still be indirect crop subsidy, whether we like it or not, whatever nomenclature we want to use, so that it will be an incentive for the distribution company. If, for example, now we have 10,000 megawatts generated in a day, and the disco is allowed to go, the prices will vary. For example, in Magboro, the price will not be the same as Sokoto. This price will not be the same as industries. But there should be what we call consensus index. The ability between, this is market, this is product. The ability between the person who is offering the service and the people at the consumer to negotiate based on mutually acceptable terms and globally acceptable consideration for contract. And once they seal the agreement, there'll be varieties or the variables. So if 70% is going to willing buyer, willing seller, the discos will be incentivized to pick more load. They'll pick 10,000 in a day, they'll pick 13,000 in a day. And now when the growth in load, what we have what we call load allocation, load dispatch by the National Control Center. If we have load allocation from the grid, load dispatch to the disco, if disco reject load, then we have, that is what we call load utilization. The load utilization end, which is the downstream, is low. So that if we have this incentive, okay, for every load that is given to you, do 70% willing buyer, willing seller. Our generation load utilization will pick up to 13%. Then the 30% of it will be on tariff. That is the way to go.
Okay.
That 70% profit will support the losses of the tariff, the tariff rate.
If you allow me.
And it will now support growth. Now, when it supports growth, it will put more money in our pocket. Whatever they are saying of tariff, when the jobs are created, when the industries are, when there's reindustrialization, the disposable income is what we are talking about. That's why I use that example of 50 kobo of bread and sardine. So if now there are more industries, more people have money in their pocket, the issue of whatever tariff, and when the tariff comes, whatever it is, because there will be a new tariff by June.
Mr. OLUBIYO, if you allow me to come in here, so we'll make this more conversational. The age-long business mantra says that consumer is king. But when it comes to electricity in Nigeria, the consumer is far from being king. And let me ask you this question in two folds. Because last year, the House of Representatives did pass a bill, although it's yet to get a concurrence from the Senate and yet to be passed or assented to by the President. But the bill was to criminalize estimated crazy billing. I want to ask you if that's a practical step in ending crazy billing. And on the other fold, I want to bring in the Consumer Protection Council in Nigeria, because their job is to ensure that consumers do get redress from issues like this. Do you think they've been living up to the expectations of Nigeria concerns power supply? Very briefly, if you can.
You know, the bill by Femi Gbajabiamila is well-intended. If you look at the intent or the spirit and letter of the bill, you will see that is in order. But I'm talking, you know, we are inside the water and we know how deep it is. What we need to talk about is strengthening the institution, Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, strengthening the other framework for customer complaints timeline, customer complaint resolution, including the ADLs and the other framework. So what we are saying in essence is that as much as the issue of criminalizing estimated billing is good, there are other variables that needed to be involved. If somebody is a meter manufacturer, they have their own issues. So what we are saying is that we need to do more. The intention of the bill is to make sure that the metering gap is close up in the short term. Now, NEC has something to do in that area as per monitoring and evaluation. That means the realm of the system. By privilege, I had cause to talk to the NEC chairman, the vice, and other executives who have provided listening air that they need to go out and monitor the performances of what we call the meter asset provider. A lot of people, a lot of discos. I'm so proud of Abuja Disco in spite of having one or two shortcomings here and there. If you apply for meter in Abuja Disco, after 10 days, even if you place a complaint, you are sure of getting. But there are some discos now that have been, since May that the program took off, consumers even have, they are willing to pay for 5 days. Say, please take one. Even there's a disco that, for example, to a whole state, they took 100 meters there and asking consumers, they were rationing it because they are not willing to allow this program to take off. So NAC, the regulatory institution, has a role to play in this regard. So customer centricity is a culture that must be imbibed by all the discos. And if we have weak regulatory enforcement, so there are issues of legal institutional regulatory framework that are obsolete. Like the NEC Act I'm talking about was enacted 2005, and that is 15 years ago. So there are a whole lot of issues that we feel that the review of privatization will take care of. It was supposed to take place in 2019. They set up the Erufai committee and shifted it to 2018, after 5 years. They shifted it to 2019. Now they're telling us December, this thing. Well, we'll wait for the event. But we cannot wait to have the review so that those who cannot perform, those that needed to be diluted, will get them diluted. Those that needed to be shaped out, should shape out. Those that can come in and inject new ideas and this thing, so that we are not really getting what we expect. And it is not something that will achieve alone with criminalizing estimated billing. There are structures, and if we don't address those governance, if we don't address all those issues, the fundamentals, you cannot be living, if you have, like, for example, if you have a cancer, you need to address the root of the cancer, ostracize it, and not just dressing the wound. Yeah, so that is, criminalizing it as good as it is, like playing to the gallery. There are fundamentals that will complement that, and that need to be addressed.
Okay. Now, so we have spoken extensively.
Consumer group
of course, we have spoken extensively on.
We've gone beyond boju. We cannot be misled by somebody playing to the gallery.
Understood.
We want practical things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, we've spoken extensively on the responsibility of the government, the things that they need to do, what they need to implement, the things that need to change. However, I'd like to, like I said, from the consumer's perspective, what do you looking forward at 2020 from what you've said? Obviously, it doesn't sound like much is going to change. Although we are very, very hopeful that things would be different. Now, I'm curious. Do you think there are things that the consumers perhaps could do? There are things that maybe they could chip in order to make the situation better, especially for themselves.
Yes, what we have been doing is that consumer group, so we are so many, we have a platform, social media group, power sector perspective. What we have been doing is the area of advocacy and putting the operators on their toes. Where we see some level of compromise, we shout. And we want to commend the media, because the media have continued to give us space like this at no cost. So, thumb up to you, the media, keep it up. This 2020, we want to get more support from you because you have given us, as gatekeepers, the voice to be, opportunity to be heard, both locally and globally from time to time. So we will not rest on our house. Personal relationship with those in government, we bring in the ministers, we allow them to hear issues. So we put them on their toes. I will continue to do that. I will ensure that whatever it will take, we will not compromise. We will not jump at the parade. We will make sure that Nigeria first, consumer first, there are a lot of issues that we are doing, putting them on that, and that will continue to sustain. We have no other country. Nigeria must work. Electricity must be seen to grow because we are sitting on gunpowder, and if we get it right with electricity, it has symbiotic relationship with sustainable growth and reindustrialization. If we don't have the industries, Nigeria is not competing globally, and we are losing out. Our graduates are not employed. Electricity is the mainstay of the economy. We need to get it right. So we are not politicians, we are not contractors. We are sure this country works, and every government that in power, we must make sure we put them on their toes, and that is what we'll do more and more in 2020. We want to thank you for this medium. We'll continue to pray that your station will be sustained financially so that you continue to give the masses, the consumers, and people like us the space to hear our voice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. OLUBIYO. We're just doing our job.
It's a great pleasure. Yeah.
Great to have you. Well, it's now time for a short break. When we come back, we'll have dance crew sensation, Gold Caviar crew here to tell us all about their art. Stay tuned.